The storm ripped through the city, but Ethan's silence was louder than thunder. In his hand, a blood-stained letter whispered a truth too cruel to believe. The words carved into his soul. The one you trust most will destroy you. Every shadow on the street seemed to laugh at his pain. The man who once trusted blindly was gone forever. And in his place, a darker Ethan was born, ready for revenge. The night was alive with chaos. Rain hammered the streets, lightning split the sky, and yet Ethan felt a silence inside him that drowned out the storm. His footsteps echoed against the empty road, each one carrying the weight of betrayal. His chest heaved, his breath sharp and broken, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. In his trembling hands, the letter shook violently, as if it too was alive with fear. The paper was soaked, the ink smeared, but the words were carved into his mind forever. The one you trust most will destroy you. He read it again and again, each time feeling the knife twist deeper into his heart. The rain poured down his face, but it wasn't enough to wash away the sting of those words. He stumbled, his knees nearly giving way, but rage kept him upright. Every shadow seemed to move, whispering his name, mocking his pain. Somewhere out there, someone was smiling at his suffering. The letter slipped from his grip, falling into a puddle. The bloodstain spread across the water like poison, staining everything it touched. Ethan stared at it, his eyes wide, not with fear, but with fury. The man who once trusted blindly was gone. In his place stood someone colder, sharper, more dangerous. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside him. His voice cracked as he whispered into the night, "This is not the end." The betrayal had cut him open, but it had also awakened something darker. Tonight was not about survival, it was about transformation. The city slept, unaware of the war that had just begun. Ethan clenched his fists, veins burning with vengeance. The rain washed his skin, but it could not cleanse the fire in his eyes. His silence was not weakness, it was the calm before the fire. He remembered every laugh, every promise, every moment of trust, and now each memory was a weapon. The letter was gone, but its words were carved into his soul. If trust can kill, then betrayal will bleed. The thunder roared, but his silence was louder. The rain poured, but his rage burned hotter. Every heartbeat was a drum of war inside his chest. Every breath was a vow of vengeance. The city lights flickered, bowing to the darkness rising within him. Ethan's shadow stretched across the street, long and menacing. He was no longer running from the truth. He was running toward it. The storm was his witness, the night his ally. And the betrayers, they had no idea what was coming. For Ethan's story had just begun, and it would be written in fire, in blood, and in screams that would echo through the night. The storm had passed, but inside Ethan, the thunder still raged. Days turned to nights, yet the words of that cursed letter refused to leave his mind. He tried to bury them, tried to convince himself it was a lie, but the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. At the family dinner table, laughter filled the room. Daniel, his childhood friend, sat across from him, raising a glass in celebration. Claire, Ethan's fiancée, leaned against his shoulder, her smile warm, her voice soft. To anyone watching, it was a picture of loyalty, of love, of trust. But to Ethan, it was a painting cracked at the edges, hiding something rotten beneath. He studied them closely, every glance, every touch, every word. Daniel's eyes lingered too long on Claire. Claire's smile flickered whenever Daniel spoke. Small details, invisible to others, but to Ethan they were daggers. That night when the house fell silent, Ethan followed Daniel. The streets were empty, the lamps flickering weakly, as if they too were afraid of what was about to be revealed. Daniel walked quickly, glancing over his shoulder, unaware that Ethan's shadow followed close behind. The path led to an abandoned park, where the trees whispered in the wind. And there she was, Claire, waiting. Her eyes lit up not at Ethan's arrival, but at Daniel's. She ran into his arms, her voice trembling with a passion Ethan had never heard directed at him. "I can't keep pretending," she whispered. "He trusts us too much." Daniel's hand cupped her face, his voice low and venomous. "That's why it's so easy. He'll never see it coming." Ethan froze in the darkness, his heart pounding so violently he thought it might give him away. His fiancée, his brother in all but blood, the two people he trusted most, bound together in betrayal. The world seemed to collapse around him. Every memory of Daniel's loyalty, every promise Claire had made, shattered like glass. The laughter at the dinner table, the vows whispered in the night, all of it was a lie. His fists clenched, nails digging into his palms until blood dripped onto the ground. But he did not step forward. He did not scream. He did not expose himself. No, that would be too merciful. Instead, he smiled for the first time in days, a smile that carried no warmth. He would let them believe their secret was safe. He would let them laugh, let them love, let them think they had won. And then, he would take everything from them, piece by piece. He started with Daniel. At work, Ethan planted seeds of doubt, subtle whispers that turned colleagues against him. A missing file here, a forged signature there, small cracks that no one could trace back to Ethan. Daniel's reputation began to crumble, and he didn't even know why. Then came Claire. Ethan's voice grew distant, his touch colder, but his eyes never left her. He let her believe he was still blind, still devoted. But behind every smile, he was studying her, memorizing her weaknesses, her fears, her secrets. At night, Ethan filled notebooks with details. Dates, times, conversations. Every lie they told became a weapon in his hands. Every stolen moment between them was another nail in their coffin. He was no longer a victim. He was the architect of their downfall. The storm inside him grew, but it was no longer wild. It was controlled, precise, like a blade honed to perfection. He trained his mind to be patient, his heart to be silent, his rage to be useful. Revenge was not a fire to burn quickly. It was a poison to spread slowly. Weeks passed, and Daniel began to notice the walls closing in. His friends avoided him, his boss questioned him, his confidence faltered. Claire, too, felt the shift. Ethan's silence unnerved her, his calmness more terrifying than any outburst. She couldn't explain it, but she felt hunted. And that was exactly what Ethan wanted. One night, as he stood over the city from a rooftop, the wind whipping through his hair, he whispered into the darkness, "You thought you broke me, but you only built me, and when I'm finished, you'll beg for the mercy you never gave me."
The city below carried on, unaware that a storm far greater than the one in the sky was about to descend. Ethan's plan was in motion. The betrayal had given birth to a monster, and now that monster was ready to strike. The game was no longer about love or friendship. It was about power. It was about vengeance. And Ethan would not stop until Daniel and Claire were left with nothing but ashes. The revenge had begun. The city moved as if nothing had changed, but for Ethan, every second was a step closer to war. His plan was no longer just ink on paper. It was alive, breathing, waiting to strike. Daniel was the first to feel the cracks. At work, whispers spread like wildfire. Documents went missing, numbers didn't add up, and somehow every mistake pointed back to him. His colleagues avoided his gaze. His boss questioned his loyalty. Daniel's confidence, once unshakable, began to crumble. He didn't know it yet, but Ethan's invisible hand was pulling every string. Claire, too, felt the shift. Ethan's silence was suffocating. He no longer argued, no longer questioned, no longer showed the warmth she once relied on. Instead, he smiled, a smile that chilled her to the bone. She couldn't explain it, but she felt hunted, as if every step she took was being watched. Ethan played his role perfectly. At dinners, he laughed. At gatherings, he embraced Daniel like a brother. To the world, nothing had changed, but behind his calm eyes, a storm raged. Every word he spoke was a trap, every gesture a move in a game only he understood. One night, Daniel received a call. A voice on the other end warned him of an investigation, of evidence that could destroy his career. Panic set in. He rushed to Claire, desperate for comfort, but even she seemed distant, distracted by Ethan's quiet presence in the background. Ethan watched them both unravel. He didn't need to raise his voice, didn't need to reveal his hand. Their own guilt was his greatest weapon. The more they tried to hide, the deeper they sank into the web he had spun. In the shadows of his apartment, Ethan marked their downfall on the wall. Photos, notes, connections. Each red line was a thread pulling tighter around their necks. He whispered to himself, his voice calm, steady, merciless. This is only the beginning. The city lights flickered outside, as if bowing to the darkness rising within him. Daniel's career was collapsing. Claire's heart was drowning in fear. And Ethan was no longer the betrayed. He was the executioner. The game was no longer hidden. It had begun to consume them, and soon the mask would fall, revealing the monster they had created. The night was silent, too silent. The city lights flickered weakly, as if they knew something dark was about to unfold. Daniel and Claire arrived at the abandoned warehouse, lured by a message they thought was secret. The air was heavy, the silence suffocating, and the single bulb above their heads swung slowly, casting long broken shadows across the floor. Claire's voice trembled. "Why did you call me here? What if someone finds out?" Daniel shook his head, his tone sharp. "No one knows. This is between us." But then the doors slammed shut with a thunderous echo. The sound reverberated through the empty space, and their hearts froze. From the darkness, footsteps emerged, slow, deliberate, merciless. Ethan stepped into the light. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with a fire they had never seen before. He looked at them not as a friend, not as a lover, but as a judge, jury, and executioner. "You thought I was blind," he said softly, his voice steady, chilling. "You thought I was weak, but I saw everything, every lie, every touch, every stolen word." Claire's lips parted, her voice breaking. "Ethan, please, it's not what you think." "Not what I think." Ethan's laugh was hollow, echoing through the warehouse. "I trusted you with my life, and you buried a knife in my back." Daniel stepped forward, trying to mask his fear with anger. "You don't understand." But Ethan cut him off, his tone sharper than any blade. "No, Daniel, I understand perfectly. You took my love. You took my trust, and now I'll take everything from you." The bulb above flickered violently, plunging the room into moments of darkness. In those flashes, Ethan's shadow loomed larger, monstrous, unstoppable. Claire clutched Daniel's arm, her body trembling. Ethan moved closer, his footsteps echoing like a countdown. "This is where your story ends, and mine begins." The light went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room, and then the silence was broken by screams that tore through the night. But the darkness did not hide Ethan's voice. It cut through the air like a blade. "Do you feel it now? The fear, the helplessness? That's what you gave me, and tonight I return it to you." Claire sobbed, her voice shaking. "Ethan, please, we made a mistake. We didn't mean." "Didn't mean?" Ethan's voice thundered. "Every kiss, every lie, every betrayal, you meant it all. And now you will pay for it." Daniel tried to step forward, but his legs betrayed him. His body trembled, his voice cracked. "You won't do it. You're not a killer." Ethan's silence was more terrifying than any answer. He circled them slowly, like a predator savoring the hunt. His footsteps echoed, steady, merciless. "You're right," he whispered. "I wasn't a killer, but you made me one." The bulb flickered back to life for a moment, and in that brief light, Daniel saw Ethan's eyes, cold, unrecognizable, filled with a darkness that could not be undone. Claire fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, I loved you once. Doesn't that mean anything?" Ethan leaned closer, his voice a whisper that froze her blood. "Love is what you used to destroy me. And now love is the weapon I'll use to destroy you." The bulb flickered again, plunging them back into shadows. The sound of chains rattled in the darkness. Daniel's breath quickened. Claire's sobs grew louder. Ethan's voice rose, calm but merciless. "You thought betrayal was the end of my story, but betrayal was only the beginning. Tonight, I write the ending, and it will be written in your screams." The warehouse walls seemed to close in, the air thick with dread. Every second stretched into eternity. Daniel's bravado shattered, his voice breaking into a plea. "Ethan, please, we were wrong. Don't do this." But Ethan only smiled, though they couldn't see it in the dark. His voice was the only thing they could hear, steady and final. "You already did this. I'm just finishing what you started." The bulb flickered one last time, casting Ethan's shadow across the wall, tall, monstrous, unstoppable. And then the light died completely. The screams that followed were not just of fear, but of realization. The realization that Ethan was no longer the man they betrayed. He was something else now, something they had created with their lies. Outside, the city carried on, unaware of the reckoning inside those walls. The storm had passed, but in that warehouse, a darker storm had been unleashed. And when the night finally fell silent again, only Ethan walked out of the shadows, his face calm, his eyes colder than death itself.
He did not look back. He did not need to, because the past was buried in that warehouse, and Ethan was reborn.